accusations that Joe Biden cheated on his wife with a porn star after his son was born. And there's actually a paper trail showing he paid the sex worker $130,000 to keep quiet about it.
Well, who did that? Joe
Biden.
And he was making, I think, less than $100,000 a year at that time as a congressman. A senator. Now, how does he do that?
You tell me. Would you vote for someone that?
Of course not.
Okay. So Trump did do that.
Trump had a fling with Stormy Daniels.
And paid her $130,000.
Hush money, yes.
And you're voting for him.
I am. My father had affairs too, and I still respect him.
How do you feel about Joe Biden using his bone spurs to dodge the Vietnam draft?
Joe Biden has a problem. He isn't an American. He isn't a patriot.
I'm sorry. I asked you, I said Biden and I meant Trump. So those were things that.
Oh, Trump?
Trump, yes. Can I ask you the question again with the right name? I'm so sorry. How do you feel about Donald Trump using his bone spurs to dodge the Vietnam draft?
My brother-in-law had flat feet. I'm sure you cannot go into a military zone, a Vietnam zone, or any of the other zones with bad feet.
Sure.
You just can't do the job.
I agree.
And it actually impacts the other soldiers, puts them in danger.
Yeah.
So no.
The
flat feet part got me. These people are absolute. It's a cult. It's an absolute cult. You see how they flipped it? It's an absolute. Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. And that's just gold. It's gold. Donald Trump can't make his bond to stave off collections in New York. And AG Tish James says, you know what? There's something called Trump Tower. There's something called Mar-a-Lago. I'm coming for it. So we're going to see what happens. The old billionaire, they can't pay the bills. Also, the Kentucky House voted to choke off funding for diversity, equity, and inclusion offices at public universities following an impassioned debate that had a GOP lawmaker dismissing DEI efforts as a failure, and Democrats defended them as pillars of support for students from underrepresented groups. Just another state that is attacked and dismantled DE&I. We'll talk about that this morning. And Biden ads are targeting Black people, and they begin tomorrow. So look out for some ads from the Biden campaign directly toward Black folks. We will have more information on that. And a Georgia doctor who was sued by a couple who accused him of posting their decapitated newborn baby on social media has been found liable in court. His excuse is just terrible. And a new Off-Broadway play explores the Dred Scott decision and what the ancestors of Dred Scott and Justice Taney might be doing today. It's a really interesting concept. It runs through the end of the month. We'll tell you more about that. So if you're in and around New York or planning to visit New York before or by the end of this month, might be something to check out. It's called American Rot. Interesting stuff. We wrote about it too. And you can read about it in some of our papers, including the Washington Informer, the American Rot. Check it out. But first, folks, you know, we talked a lot about the situation down in Fulton County, Georgia, with the District Attorney Fonnie Willis, and folks have chimed in. Some have even said, "Oh, she was a bit, sloppy or whatever," which is just rhetoric, really. Folks have said that they were wrong, or that she knew this, she knew that. Well, as someone pointed out too that the lawyers on the other side, two of them were once married. So should they be should one of them be disqualified from the case? I mean, it's a whole lot of hot air. The fact of the matter is, Fonnie Willis is a single woman. This guy, whether you like the fact or dislike the fact that he had not completed his divorce or whatever, that's, there's a lot of morality questions for the morality police. But the fact is, this is a hardworking woman that saw a man, was attracted to a man, he's attracted to her, and they do what people do who are attracted to each other. Nothing more than that, nothing less than that. But of course, in an effort to tarnish her, we saw the judge do what he did because he was in on it too and remains in on it. And you could tell based on his ruling. Why kick the man off the case? Why kick Wade off the case? An accomplished prosecutor himself, he wouldn't have had the job if he didn't have the credentials. It wasn't about his relationship with her. In fact, they tend to have proved that relationship started later. That it wasn't that she was doing a favor because it was her boyfriend. He wasn't her boyfriend at the time, and she wasn't doing him no favors. Other people turned the job down, including the governor turned the job down. It's a tough job. Nobody wanted to go against Trump. Wade said when she finally approached him, he was down on the list. In fact, he could have felt the way about it. Well, I'm like your fifth choice. I'm not doing it because I should have been your first choice or whatever. But no, Wade, Nathan Wade took the job, a job that he knew would put
It would
him,
begin.
family, in the line of fire, and in the type of fire that none of us, no matter who we've gone up against before, have ever experienced. This whole MAGA machine where you got just random crazies walking around. And I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna tell you something. I know exactly how people can say how. I'm gonna tell you how. I know exactly how he feels about having crazies, random crazies. Now, it's one thing to clearly identify and know the enemy. It's another thing to not know how many of them are, where they might come from, all walks of life. I found that out when I had to do the unthinkable for many, for millions, for billions of people, for hundreds of millions of people, when I had to testify against Michael Jackson at his trial. There were crazies that I didn't know were crazies. I had to walk around Santa Maria, California with a sheriff deputy protecting me at all times. And people say, "Oh, you had a security. That must have felt cool." No, it did not. No, it did not. No, it did not. I had people, I was put in a sequestered hotel like I was a jury member. And I had people find out the phone number to my room, including members of Michael Jackson's family. Two of his brothers called me in that room. His mother called me in that. How did they get the number? Then I'm somewhere else, way out of state somewhere. And as a footnote, just the other day, doing a routine stuff, 2 days ago, routine stuff, my wife, my daughters, and myself. And someone says to my wife, "Is that the Stacey Brown that knew Michael Jackson?" My wife was freaked out because it was like all these years later. So what I'm saying here is what they decided to take on. They know that your life changes and your life is put in danger on a regular basis. So Nathan Wade knew the dangers. He knew he wasn't the first, second, third choice. And he took on the job. And for the Judge McAfee to show his MAGAbilly, as Power 96 says, for Judge McAfee to do that, all he was doing was the bidding because they found nothing inappropriate, nothing wrong. He could find nothing wrong. He wanted to. He wanted to find something wrong, and he did not. He chastised the district attorney for her uh, what he called unprofessional behavior. Nothing to do with Wade. It was about her responses on the witness stand and about a speech she had made. Nothing. It had nothing to do with the case. Nothing they presented. It showed you he was doing the bidding. Better yet, we on this program really like and enjoy Joyanne Reed from MSNBC. It was absolutely a privilege and a pleasure to have her on the program a couple of weeks ago. We love her monologues. Let us hear from Joy Reid on her take, the right take on this situation.
In tonight with the most American of realities. If you're a rich white guy, and especially if you're a celebrity and a former president, not only are you above the law, you are so above the law that if you get indicted for trying to overturn an election and thus overthrow the government, that case isn't even about you. Today, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee ruled that Fulton County DA Fani Willis will not be disqualified from prosecuting the racketeering case against Donald Trump. Trump tried it. It didn't work. His case will be prosecuted in Georgia. MAGA Inc. failed to prove a conflict of interest, perhaps because there was no conflict of interest. But in making that ruling, Judge McAfee, a Federalist Society alumnus, managed to still help Donald Trump, ruling that because of a so-called appearance of impropriety, either Fani Willis or the special prosecutor with whom she had a relationship must step down from the case. And so, Special Assistant District Attorney Nathan Wade resigned from the case just hours after the decision, writing, quote, "I am offering my resignation in the interest of democracy, in dedication to the American public, and to move this case forward as quickly as possible." Make no mistake, this was a victory for Fani Willis, since the RICO case against Trump and his fellow defendants will go on. But the judge's decision also came with a strong rebuke of Willis's, quote, lapse in judgment. And this is where we need to pause. Fani Willis's lapse in judgment? Defense attorneys argue that Willis should have been removed from the case because of her relationship with Wade, with whom she hired in November of 2021. But let's remember what this case is actually about. Willis has charged Trump and 18 co-defendants with racketeering for their alleged actions in trying to overturn the 2020 election. 4 have taken guilty pleas. But today, what we got to do in America was ask questions about Willis and Wade, when their romantic relationship began, where they traveled, and how much they paid for dinner, and about the woman prosecutors alleged had bad judgment. We're talking about everybody except the guy who tried to overthrow the government, the guy who in a taped call vaguely threatened Georgia's Republican Secretary of State and pressured him to steal an election.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
It's a bizarre world. Bizarre, yet predictable. Trump is either the luckiest guy in the world, or this country was built for rich men like him to thrive. Two things can be true. Only in America can a case against a white man trying to overthrow an election morph into a debate over a black woman's consensual relationship and the vacations she took. Judge McAfee said Willis's romantic relationship raised the appearance of impropriety. He pointedly concluded that an odor of mendacity remains. He also described Willis's January speech before an historic black church in Atlanta as legally improper because she accused her critics of playing the race card by questioning her right to appoint Wade. What does that have to do with the RICO case against Trump and his co-defendants, you ask? Oh, right, nothing. Except that Judge McAfee, like Fani Willis, is up for re-election. He faces primary challengers. And for a conservative judge, one who already reduced the number of counts against Trump last week, and who, as part of his re-election media tour, appeared last week on a talk radio show hosted by a conservative Trump fan while we were all awaiting his decision, no odor of mendacity there, I suppose. I mean, if you can't give Trump an outright win by throwing out the case, since the law gives you no reason to do that, what better way to still be helpful than to give Trump and his right-wing media friends some talking points? I mean, he couldn't find anything unlawful about Fani Willis and her consensual relationship, so instead, he festooned his decision with gratuitous critiques of her behavior, tone policing her attitude and level of black lady sassiness, uppityness, you might say. Certainly helpful for his political future, and certainly helpful for Trump and the right-wing slime machine, who can continue to try to make this case about Fani Willis. If I'm being honest, it's giving special counsel Robert Hur, the self-declared Republican prosecutor who threw in gratuitous personal critiques of President Biden's memory and age like an amateur neurologist, while explaining his decision not to prosecute him for keeping classified documents. Like Mr. Hur, Judge McAfee put a right-wing spin on his decision that didn't need to be there. And it rose like a delicious foam for the MAGA cult to devour. Today, America is breathlessly debating Fani Willis, and not the adjudicated sexual abuser who defrauded banks and insurers, stole classified information and hid them in his bathroom and under his bed, and who is dogged by $500 million in legal debt that his brokest voters will pay for him, and who still, despite all of that, faces zero accountability in America, clearly, which was built for men like him. The man who long ago said this about sexually abusing women, but which also seems to apply to every other criminal thing that he has done.
It's like a magnet. You just I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the you can do anything.
When you're a star, you can do anything. If there is one thing that Trump ever said that is true, it's that. Joining me now is Paul Butler, MSNBC legal.
Yeah, and so she said argue with yourself, Mr. Keys. Argue with yourself, the rest of you, if you have a problem with what she said. He says, Mr. Keys says, I can't believe I subscribe to this mess because it's not MAGA stuff, Mr. Keys. How did she violate the oath of office? No, Mr. Keys. You're absolutely 1000% wrong. And probably willfully wrong. Just like at the top of the show, we saw the willfully ignorant MAGA cult make a case against the former president and realize they were making a case against the former president and then change their tone. Homegirl said he had flat feet. Had flat feet. Unbelievable. And now the Jim Jones of today, Donald Trump, is facing insurmountable difficulties in obtaining a bond to satisfy this $464 million civil fraud judgment. His attorneys appealed yesterday that you got to stop the removal of his assets. You got to prevent that. You got to give us a different bond. Once again, they want to change the laws and change the rules to fit Donald Trump. District Attorney Tish James says, Judge, we going after the collateral, his real estate, et cetera, et cetera. Now, they're going to try and get the judge to lower it. But it was the judge, if you recall, and it's very rare, very, very rare that a judge reverses his own order. So it looks like unless the MAGA people, which I'm sure they are going out of their minds trying to find a way to raise $464 million for Jim Jones 2.0, or who Mike V says Tangerine Tyrant, to come out from under this. Remember, they did a GoFundMe. They raised about $1 million. That's a far cry from $464 million. And the attorneys can plead. He says he's a multi-billionaire. He has all these. He said, didn't he say Mar-a-Lago was worth a couple of billion itself? Well, there you have it. If that's the case, I mean, folks live in homes that may be worth $500,000, and they take out a second loan, maybe for half of that. Well, there you go, Don. Just do it. Just do it. And we see more of this poisonous right-wing MAGA stuff going on. Now in Kentucky, the House voted to stop funding. They follow in Florida and Texas and other places. Stop funding diversity, equity, and inclusion offices at public universities. Not Democrats, but Republicans called DE&I a failure. Imagine that. They called it a failure. Democrats defended them as pillars of support for students from underrepresented groups. Why is America so afraid of leveling the playing field? In other words, why are you so afraid? Just you come to a fight, a gunfight, and you only want black folks and Hispanic folks to bring switchblades while you have Uzis. Why are you so afraid to give us the same ammunition? Why are you so afraid that when a black woman or a black man or a Latino man or a Latino woman walk into corporate America and have the same credentials as you, why are you so afraid that they're going to get that job over you? Why are you so afraid with all things being equal, they're going to get, and that's why you're afraid. I'm answering my own question, right? Because with all things being equal, they are going to get that job over you because they're going to be better at interviewing, better at articulating what is their vision. But without DE&I, without affirmative action, you guys, because we've been playing by your rules for hundreds of years, you get to set more rules. I saw it on the girl who used to play, and I hate to use the term girl, right? I shouldn't use, but the young lady who used to play Regina on the Steve Harvey show, on the new show, on the latest show she has. My wife was watching it at one point. I forget the name of the show, but on the preview, she says, every single time we get in scoring position, they move the goalpost back. Every single time. And Power 96, that's the other thing, allies. And that's see, while we seem to need allies, because everybody else got allies. We see it all the time with when it comes to uh, other types of hate, anti-Semitism, Asian hate, all that. Black folks, other folks jump in for the cause, and they go full bore. I never forget I saw Rihanna marching in New York a few years ago in the Stop Asian Hate thing. Full bore. We go all the way to the limit. No one seems to do that for us in our cause. No one seems to say, you know what? We had a moment of that. We had a moment of that after George Floyd's murder, where the whole world finally recognized that black folks has just been done so dirty forever. But it was a moment. It turned out not a movement. It was a moment. Because the minute the camera stopped rolling, the minute the story changed, the minute something else went into the headlines, all those folks abandoned ship. Corporate America abandoned ship. Politicians abandoned ship because it was no longer the headline that it was. And Power 96 says, where is John Calipari? You know, John Calipari, the big time coach of the University of Kentucky. And Power 96 notes that he recruits nothing but the best black basketball players to play there. Where is he? Why is he speaking out? You know, we always say, listen, many people say, if only we just stuck closer together, we wouldn't need an ally. But the way they've set up the rules, we definitely need an ally, a true ally. Where are you, ally of the black cause? That is really the question. And Austin says white guilt to do right is far too often fleeting and brief. And that's exactly the point. That is exactly the point. And now the way things are set up, you can have 10 more George Floyds and you'll never get 2020 again. You'll never get that again. It was the perfect storm, but you'll never get that again. And even in our perceived allies, and I'm going here with this too. The Biden-Harris administration has released a pair of new campaign videos highlighting President Biden and Vice President Harris's dedication to advancing the social and economic progress of Black Americans. They are the first campaign ads in which the president speaks directly to Black Americans regarding his strategies to propel Black America forward and address the aftermath of the Trump administration's disastrous actions. The ads are titled Price and Back and are scheduled to air beginning tomorrow, or Thursday, I should say, in states that include Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Principal Deputy Campaign Manager Quentin Folks said, and I quote, Donald Trump was a complete failure for Black America. Black unemployment and uninsured rates spiked. His botched response to COVID-19 put the lives of our community at risk, and he dismantled a rule that combated housing bias against Black Americans. And as a side note, to that, to the fact that Trump combated housing bias against Black Americans, today in Las Vegas, the president is unveiling a whole new initiative about housing. And so we'll hear more from the president on that. The White House did give us a heads up on it. There's a story on our internal newswire and should be headed toward blackpressusa.com at some point. And Dr. Nicole says, are they advertising in Black newspapers? That remains to be seen. And that's exactly where I was going, Dr. Nicole. That's exactly where I was going. You know, and these are video ads that all newspapers, just about, websites now have. So we will see. I know that the first batch that went out a couple months ago, it did include Byron Allen's The Griot, which is Black owned. But other than Byron Allen's The Griot, which is Black owned, what else is Black owned other than our member newspapers at the National Newspaper Publishers Association? More than 200. But in fact, we got 6 new members last week at our Black Press Week to the National Newspaper Publishers Association, or NNPA, which is the trade association for the Black Press of America, born 197 years ago. I can go into the whole spiel. Our founders, Freedom Journal in New York in 1827, March 16th, 1827. And here we are, 197 years in, the trusted voice of Black America, because it comes from, it's Black, it's authentically Black owned. It's run by Black people and operated by Black people, owned by Black people. And no, and I did check last night with our advertising executive, and no, the Biden campaign has not. And it's a shame because I talk about 2020. Well, it was 2020 when Biden was running for president. It was 2020. We were in Charleston, South Carolina, almost to the day. I mean, it was February 26, 2020. Myself, Dr. Chavis, and a whole contingent of publishers from the Black Press of America, NNPA, sat down with then candidate Biden in South Carolina Charleston. And at that point, the Biden campaign was lagging behind Bernie Sanders, even behind Michael Bloomberg at the time. There was talk that the Biden campaign, there was a talk that the Biden campaign might be folding its tents if things didn't go right in South Carolina. So what did the campaign do? Cedric Richmond was there as well. And what did the campaign do? They answered the call of the black press. They sat down with us. We did a live stream of that discussion. I wrote about it as well. Dr. Chavis led the discussion. It invigorated the the Biden campaign at the time. He hadn't selected Harris at the time as vice president. It invigorated them so much so that later that day, the kingmaker, James Clyburn, South Carolina congressman, whispered in Joe Biden's ear, "Now, Joe, what will put you over the top? Go out there on that stage. You done talk to the black press. I'm about to endorse you. Go out there on that stage and promise that you are going to nominate the first black woman to the Supreme Court." Campaign advisors told Biden, "No, not a good idea, not a good idea." Clyburn said, "The campaign is on the line." Biden went out on that stage and said, I will be the first to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court." Biden's campaign never looked back. They swept through South Carolina. They swept through the rest of the delegates. They became the nominee. And of course, handily won the White House with over 81 million votes. Yet, Dr. Nicole, I have not heard and have not been able to confirm in any way, shape, or form. And again, I did speak to the guy who would know last night. There's no check to the black press. There's all pomp and circumstances. The president has constantly mentioned how much the black press has meant to him, not only uh, during his professional life, but even as a child growing up in Wilmington, Delaware, and Scranton, Pennsylvania, around black folks, particularly Wilmington, Delaware. He tells the story often about how, like we tell the story in New York, how the Amsterdam News had to be on our table along with any other paper. He tells the story of how his folks made him read the black press. And I mean, he'll tell you about eating ribs with black folks and et cetera, collard greens. And it's all true. He still does it. A couple of years ago at the White House Correspondents Association dinner in front of a global audience on C-SPAN and other news outlets, not to mention the few thousand in the room there, other media in the room, mostly other media. He heralded the black press. He talked fervently about those two black women from the 1940s and 50s who was members of the NMPA, Chicago Defender. And last year, he did this almost the same thing. He constantly talks up the black press. There's an old saying, y'all know it, put your money where your mouth is. And that's where we should leave it, right there. Biden campaign. The administration, the everyone who works for him, pretty much everyone who works for the administration has demonstrated a kinship, a respect, and an appreciation for the black press. The campaign because they're two different animals. They're two different things. The campaign has little to do with the administration based on the Hatch Act. You can't mix the two. So there are different people in the campaign, but I will tell you who's in the campaign. There are two of the big decision makers are African Americans. Two of their big decision makers. Now there are other decision makers, but I know two in particular are African Americans. We met with them. They did a black press only roundtable at Biden's headquarters in Wilmington. I was there. Cedric Richmond is also in that campaign. So there is no rhyme nor reason, outside of maybe some unspoken pettiness that might be going on there. I don't know. Can't call it out. But this is absolutely absurd when they promise to spend $1 billion or more in advertising and marketing. Mike V says, looking at the 2020 midterms results in 9 million new voters coming on for 2024 in November, it looks like the Tangerine Tyrant doesn't have numbers to win against Biden. And maybe, and maybe, Mike, maybe that is what they are seeing and believing. Remember, we can't always believe things until it happens. But maybe that's what they're seeing, and maybe they're taking it for granted. Maybe the black press is going to support us anyway, is what they're probably saying. And it's not about supporting them. I'm gonna be clear. What we do on this program is not supporting President Biden. We're just presenting facts. And it is a fact, yes, that what they've done for Black America. It is a fact the disservice Trump brings to Black America. The complete destruction that Trump brings. The run for the border, if you can, that a Trump presidency would bring. What we do is support the interests of Black people. And if Biden or Harris, for that matter, messes up, we're here to tell you they messed up. We are not in the business, at least on this program, of endorsing anybody. You know, but the bottom line is Black people got Biden and Harris where they are. And so we are speaking, as they say, truth to power. They know it. They've said it. Biden has said it. He said it to our faces. I've been there. I've been to the Oval Office. I've been to the White House. Without you, he said, I wouldn't be sitting here in this position. I wouldn't be president. In fact, and that is fact. So this idea that the black press of America, 197 years, we're about to do 200 years. What business has been around 197 years? You can say what you want. Maybe we don't have 1 billion followers. Maybe 100 million is not enough. But we do know that there are 50 million, nearly 50 million African Americans now in America. And we do know whether they tune in or not, somewhere their cousin are telling them about the Washington Informer. Their sister is telling them about the Afro-American. Their father is telling them about the Los Angeles Sentinel. They're getting information from the black press. Black people listen to black people. They hear us, whether they agree with us or not. So you can go around the country. We had a great, again, a great situation a couple of weeks ago. Got a call from a homegirl at the White House. And they got some home. And I say homegirl with all due respect, because that's what they are. They are homegirls. They are they are true troopers. Said, hey, put me in touch, please, with your newspaper in Pittsburgh. The vice president is coming to Pittsburgh. I called up first. Hiram Jackson is the guy who owns Real Time Media. Real Time Media has a few papers, including the New Pittsburgh Courier. I called him. Rod Doss is the he publishes New Pittsburgh Courier. Called him up, got his voicemail first, and then got Hiram, and then finally Rod called me back, and 2 days later, we all talking about this great picture on the front page of the New Pittsburgh Courier. This great story that went along with it. Not only did the vice president visit Pittsburgh, but she did something she didn't even do and has not done, to my knowledge, with mainstream newspapers. She went into the offices of the New Pittsburgh Courier, went into the publisher's office, sat down, and had a lovely conversation. They understand the value of the Black press. They understand that what they should be doing, but they're obviously taking it for granted, Dr. Nicole, as you said. And that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate because in this type of race that you're in this type of situation where the president says the soul of America is at stake, where others say democracy is at stake, it is unthinkable that you would take any perceived advantage that you might have for granted. And that is what the Biden-Harris administration sees in the Black press. That's the bottom line, a perceived advantage. They're going to boost us up whether we give them $1 in advertising or not. That is the problem in NPA. That is the problem, Black press. And I'm not saying we should change that because we're a news organization here. The NPA is a trade association, but we do news. But that is the problem. Folks do that all the time. When they feel, oh, I got that one. Let me go after this one. And just neglect. That's why people cheat on their spouses. That's why they cheat on their spouses. They feel all comfortable. Oh, I got her. I got him. That dude, that girl, she look good. Take it for granted. You take it for granted. Next thing you know, you go over there and mess with him or her. And then reliable, beautiful, comfortable, lovely, loving, caring is gone. So go ahead, Biden, Harris, campaign, go mess with the hoochies. Mess around, find out. Mess around and find out. In Georgia, a Georgia doctor who was sued by a couple who accused him of posting their decapitated newborn baby on social media has been found liable in court. Dr. Jackson Gates and his business, Medical Diagnostic Choices, were sued in civil court by Jessica Ross and Travion Isaiah Taylor Sr. They had hired him to perform an independent autopsy on their baby, who they called baby Isaiah. The baby died during delivery in July of 2023, after which Gates posted graphic and grisly videos of the autopsy on social media without the parents' knowledge or consent. So a Fulton County judge granted a default judgment against Gates and his business because they failed to respond to the civil suit. They were found liable of intentional infliction of emotional distress, invasion of privacy, and fraud. Now, a bench trial is going to determine the amount of damages owed to the parents. Gates, instead of showing up at court, called up the local NBC News affiliate and told them that what he did was not a violation of the HIPAA laws. He said the HIPAA clause states that as a physician, I am within my capability of letting the public know when there's safety issue in healthcare. This baby was murdered, he said, adding, no one would have known about the case had he not spoken up. He says, I have not violated HIPAA. It is not required by a physician to get consent to report a crime or some sort of health issue to the public. He goes on to say, I've been doing this for 15 years, publishing my autopsy cases to explain to the public the victimization of those persons who have died. What a complete mess here. According to court records, on July 12th, Ross signed a contract with Gates to conduct an autopsy of baby Isaiah in exchange for $2,500. So they paid $2,500 for the autopsy. And they're saying that that contract did not give the doctor or his business permission to release the postmortem examination. But 2 days later, he did. And it was just, it's awful. I won't recommend anybody go look for this video that he posted. Um, your thoughts on that, Mike, Power 96, Dr. Nicole. I mean, Austin. Your thoughts on that? It's just, to me, it's hideous to do that. It's outright. It's got to be a violation of HIPAA, unless in that contract they waived HIPAA, and maybe that's the part where the doctor felt like he could do whatever he wanted. But I don't see how that he's saying that he believes the baby was murdered, but I don't see, unless the authorities have decided to investigate a murder or a homicide or whatever. I just don't see how that is even thinkable. Yeah. Power 96 and Austin says, no, this is not right. Cold and callous is what Austin says. This is it's off the chain. Judge ruled against him. Now, it's interesting that he won't, he didn't show up in court, but decides to go to NBC News. Unethical is what Mike V said. It's really, really, really suspicious that he would go to a news outlet. Wow. There's nothing sacred anymore, right? Nothing sacred. The world is just it's a cesspool. I've been wanting to use that word for some reason. It's a cesspool. Oh boy. Well, before we close today, I noticed this. I decided to reach out and write about this. This is I thought was really interesting. It's a moving exploration of America's racial reckoning. Writer and actor Kate Taney Billingsley has unveiled her family's deep-rooted connection to one of the most infamous decisions, perhaps the most infamous decision in U.S. Supreme Court history. And you know, this court is looking for ways to top that, or to go lower than that, I should say. This current court. The gripping narrative delves into the legacy of Chief Justice Roger Brooke Taney, whose pivotal decision in the Dred Scott decision of 1857 reverberates is the word I'm looking for, throughout generations. Of course, you know, in the ruling, the High Court declared that enslaved people are not citizens of the country and consequently are not entitled to any rights or protections under federal law. Taney was the Chief Justice at the time, and he delivered the majority opinion on March the 6th, 1857, and now what we know as the Dred Scott decision. It was a significant setback for the abolitionist movement, and it intensified the debate over slavery. And you know the history. We can go on and on. Scott was an enslaved black man. His wife argued that he and his wife argued that they should be free because they had resided in free territories where slavery was outlawed. And what initially appeared to be a straightforward lawsuit between private parties, it escalated into the broader legal and political showdown. It was just reflected what it was going on in that division between North and South. So, in Billingsley's introspective, I should say, it is on the stage. It's a Broadway, off-Broadway theater called La Mama's Ellen Stewart Theater. It's in New York, and the film is called American Rot. And so it's set against this backdrop of a diner off the New Jersey Turnpike. And the narrative weaves together the lives of descendants from both Dred Scott and Judge Taney. And there's a lot of raw emotions and confrontations. And so she says, I inherited this generational trauma in the family. So through the lens of theater, she really fights with a fundamental question. Should her family apologize for the sins of their forebears? It's really, really interesting. At the heart of the narrative are the descendants of Taney and Scott. They are locked in a tense confrontation, and that question of whether or not an apology should happen um, is at the center of it. Somebody said that the play moves like a freight train. It is really, it's captivating for sure. So Billingsley says she harbors hope for dialogue and understanding amidst the pain and confrontation. So she says she envisages her play as a catalyst for introspection and conversation. She's urging audiences to confront uncomfortable truths that are embedded within America's collective consciousness. It runs through the end of this month. So she's hoping that it'll be picked up on a national tour, if not on a main stage on Broadway. Power 96 says Taney's descendants own the Clarence Thomas's, Tim Scott, and Candace Owens of the world. I guess that's true. But American Rot, I just thought that was interesting, and I've been looking at my schedule to see if I'm going to be in New York before the end of the month. It's a tight window, but I'm hoping to make. I don't know. I want to see it in its entirety, but I know that it's not going to. I just have a feeling that it's just not going to be. I'm not going to be satisfied with how it ends or how the outcome and all that stuff. Just not going to be satisfied. So that is American Rot. So if you're in New York, I mean, I still think that it might be worth uh, everything I've been able to surmise from it. I think it might be worth your while if you go check out American Rot. This place is rotten. This is rotten, rotten to the core. Anyway, listen, thank you all so much for your participation as always. And you know what I'm gonna say? Go to YouTube and subscribe. LIBK News. Subscribe, and we will see you again with headlines for Wednesday morning and more on Let It Be Known. See you tomorrow.
What is our cause today in the upcoming national elections here in the United States? What is our call today in the face of those in power who are taking every legislative and judicial step to distort and even to deny our history, purpose, and mission? What is our cause today? Come on, somebody. Tell me, what is our cause today? Without fear and intimidation, what is our cause today? The state of the Black church today has to answer that question.